This episode, we are finally putting some colour on my 1982 RN46 Hilux. Whoa. We picked the colour, we're getting it on the body and the tub. We're going to show you some tips and tricks along the way. Plus, we're also going to start getting the engine ready to throw in the vehicle. This is going to be epic. I've waited so long for it. Oh, how good. Let's get into it.
But before we get into that, here's a quick recap on the project. Over the last year, we've been restoring my 1982 RN46 Hilux. We stripped the vehicle in the shed, sent off the diffs and chassis to be sandblasted, then got stuck into panel beating and rust repair. We showed you the step-by-step process to get your project's body ready to be resprayed, so you can save some money and have a go yourself. Go and check out the previous episodes if you haven't already, and hopefully you'll pick up a few tips for your next project. Now, back to the Luxy. I'm down at Kappa Motor Bodies in Naracoorte, where the team here have been working hard to help me with the final stages in prepping the cab, tub and panels ready to be sprayed. The reason I decided to do this is it's quite cold down in Adelaide at the time of filming this episode, and cold weather spells disaster when it comes to spray painting. So I opted to bring the Luxy here as they have temperature controlled spray booths that provide warmer working conditions to help set the freshly painted panels, and it means they can paint vehicles the whole year round. All right, we are in our final stages before we apply the color on. Before we do that though, this is the guard that I've been ticking away at to show you the process. Now remember, that whole process we've done on this guard will apply to everything else on the vehicle. So the last step before we put our color on is we're going to do one more coat of primer, then we can apply our color once it dries. Now this is an automotive high build 2-pack primer. I'm basically going to go around the edges, over the top and down the side. Then once it's kind of baked for a little bit, you can see we are in a booth for this. We are ready for colour. We're getting there. Now that it's primed for the final time, Damien's going to talk us through the last steps we need to do to make sure all the panels are spotless for paint.
So as Jock says, it's party time. It's time to put on the final coats of paint, and it's really easy for things to go wrong here. So we've got a couple of tips to make sure that doesn't happen. Number one is cleanliness. We want to make sure that the panel is spotlessly clean and we pick up all the dust and dirt that might be on there. So what we want to do is we want to wet the panel up with some wax and grease remover. Then we're going to use one cloth to wipe it off and pick up all of that dust and dirt and any silicone that might be on the job. And then the second one to dry it. Want to make sure that we're really thorough with this step so that we can pick up any little bits of dust. Now for some extra insurance, we're going to use a tack cloth. This little cloth's got a bit of stickiness to it, and this will pick up any remaining bits of lint or anything that might have come off of our cleaning cloth. And we're also going to use a blower just to make sure we get the lot. So tip 2 comes to putting on the colour. And there's a couple of little things we need to remember. Firstly, when we paint a panel, we want to make sure that we cover the edges first. And the reason for that, with any peaks or troughs, you want to make sure that you've got plenty of paint on those so that they actually get covered. Then the next thing is doing the full piece of the panel. And it's really important to make sure that you've got the right speed and the right distance from the panel. And all the guns do vary a little bit in the way they're set up. But what I prefer to do is start at the top of the panel and work my way down. Don't be afraid to have a go on a test panel to make sure you've got your gun set up right and your technique. So step 3 is to just slow down and enjoy the process. You've spent a lot of time and a lot of money, no doubt, in getting the job to where it is today. So we want to make sure that we have cleaned it all properly, got all of the imperfections out, we put on the colour nice, and the job will be beautiful. So let's hand it over to Jock and see if he has listened to what we've said.
Just before we go and mix up the paint, thought it'd be a good time to answer a question we've gotten a lot, and that is, what's the plan? Are you Raptor coating it? Are you using a normal paint? What's the plan? So it's going to be a bit of a mix. Underneath the tub floor and inside the tub and underneath the cab, we're going to be Raptor coating it because that's real high traffic areas for things like stone chips and putting things in the back. Real common to do in a lot of high-end restorations on things like, you know, Monaros and Torontos and stuff. A lot of those companies will use Raptor, particularly on the floor, because it's perfect for that application. And then for the rest of the vehicle, so the cab, the guards, the doors, and the outside of the tub, we're going to be using an automotive 2-pack clear over base, and really stoked about the color choice. I reckon it's going to look absolutely beautiful. So we'll go mix it up, and we're going to use Raptor tintable on the insides of the tubs. Underneath the tub floor is going to be black, so it's a bit of a mix, but then the outsides will be that automotive 2-pack clear over base, and I reckon it's going to look Final prep on the tub. All hands on deck to get it ready. What we're doing now is we're just sanding down the floor and other bits that we're going to be going over with some tintable Raptor in the color we're doing. So the good thing is, because with Raptor you can mix it with any automotive 2-pack paint, it'll come up real nice in the color we've chosen for the vehicle, which you'll see shortly.
Once we've sanded the tub, we'll then move on to masking the areas that aren't being painted. You'll notice that we first stick down a strip of fine line tape before our masking plastic. These tapes we're using are specifically designed to withstand high temperatures that far exceed what we'll be baking this car in. This is especially important to prevent our masked areas from lifting and potentially having the paint run or overspray.
Another thing that's really important that you want to do before you paint it, particularly on the tray here, a lot of these trays would sit in farmers' paddocks for years and get water under things, and as we discovered when we were doing all the repairs, there's a fair bit of rust in places. So it's important to seam seal all the joints so that once you paint it, water's not going to get back under there and you won't get rust building up in places you can't get to. This is a really important step. Doesn't take long. You can get this stuff from your local hardware store, and you just want to go over all the gaps and seal everything up nicely, and you shouldn't have any problems with rust after you paint it. Now all I'm doing is just going over what I seam sealed with the wax and grease remover just to smooth everything off, and we're good for paint. This is exciting. It's finally time to check out the color we chose. Now, I saw this on a 40 Series Land Cruiser over in the States and I thought, perfect, that's the one for me. It's a 2-pack base coat and it is red, funnily enough, but a particular red, it's a Toyota red. It's called Freeborn Red, and I reckon it looks really nice. It's gonna come up mint. The plan is, obviously we've got to mix it up still. We've got some tintable Raptor. We're gonna use that for the bed of the tray and on the tops as well and the headboard. And then the rest, we'll get the base coat on the cab and guards and doors. I reckon that's going to come up beautiful.
The first step to any Raptor coating is shaking the bottles well before mixing in your colour. Once that's done, I poured hardener in, then the colour. Once you've combined all three, shake it one last time before heading into the spray booth. All up, we used about 5 bottles of the tintable Raptor for the tub for those high traffic areas. While we set the tub aside to bake, we can crack on with masking up the cab and the rest of the panels.
So Damien and I are just doing some prep work on the cab. It's important that when you are doing a job like this, don't just go to your local hardware store and get any old tape. Get yourself some automotive grade masking tape, because particularly when you're spraying, you want to make sure the seal is really good. And in our case, this is going to be baking in an oven, and this stuff can handle the higher temperatures for when that paint's baking. But just in general, when you are masking this stuff, you'll find it sticks just a little bit better when you're masking things up. And the last thing you want when you've got so much masking to do on your project is to be faffing about with tape that's not sticking onto your job properly. It's quite a slow job, the old mask, but it's necessary. And if you just spend a little bit extra on the proper stuff, it'll be worth it.
The base coat is on and it's already looking spectacular. The next step is to spray the U-Pole clear coat over the top.
Whoa, that has come up amazing. Look at that. Yep, I'm happy with this color choice. That has come up amazing. Damo, look at that.
I know, it looks all right.
Wow, you're not bad.
Shiny, it's red.
Yep, it's shiny, it's red. What do you guys reckon? Reckon we picked the right color for the red Hilux?
I think we did.
I reckon we did, mate. Looks beautiful.
Since Damien finished up the cab and the doors, I tackled the front panels myself. All was going well and I was on a high. I was happy with how I sprayed the guard and I didn't have any issues in the process. But that all came crashing down when Damien said this.
Yeah, cool. You ready?
Something I need to show you, mate.
What happened?
This way. After you. Your great paint job.
Oh my God. Did you do that?
What have you done?
You stitching me up, Damo?
I would never stitch you up, mate. Why would I stitch you up? But why would you waste so much paint?
I think this is a stitch up, ladies and gents.
So it's a bit of a spray painter's trick for new spray painters like Jock. We like to have a bit of fun. So let's see if we can get a bit of extra paint on this job. Nice and wet. Let's see if that runs.
Now that I'm a qualified tradesman, pretty hard to get runs like that from one light coat, mate. So,
yes.
Yeah,
okay.
you trying to fool me?
Well, maybe, but you know, let's see. Hey?
What a stitch up. This is what spray painters do to stitch each other up, eh?
The tub is back from baking in the Raptor. Now it's time to spray the clear over base layer over the rest of the tub. We start with those hard to reach places. Before we spray a layer over the entire tub, including the already existing Raptored areas. Reluctantly, Damo even gave me another go at spraying.
Now the body and the tub are all painted, we can actually sit everything back on the chassis and see how it fits. And to do that, I managed to get some brand new genuine Toyota body mounts. It was a little bit of a challenge with these older vehicles. Sometimes parts get discontinued, so I ended up having to go through the part numbers. There were some body mounts that I couldn't get anymore. I got them as close as we could. So we'll set these up in place and then we can bring the cab and the tub over, set everything on nicely. And for the first time since we stripped it, we'll be able to see the cab and the tub back on the chassis, all painted and looking nice. I can't wait.
Hey, Jocko, what do you think about that,
How
mate?
incredible is this? Look,
Yeah.
look how it's turned out. For an old Hilux.
It's been really good to show all the steps of how to do it. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not difficult to do, it just takes a little bit of time.
Takes a bit of time. The vehicle looks like this now, but what we started with, a lot of it was done in your shed. You know, products, everything actually that we got to make the car look like this, aside from the colour itself, is a U-Pole product. So
Yeah, that's right. All the fillers right through to the clear coat on the top. So
Yep.
no, product for everything.
definitely.
When it comes to being a panel beater, mate, I think you've earned your stripes.
Earned my stripes,
really.
you reckon?
I mean,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
we do have a token of appreciation.
A token,
but,
yeah.
But not only that, a certificate of achievement.
Wow.
So
Look at that.
Jock McDonald Damo Shed. It's a certificate in spray painting and panel beating, sort of kind of.
Look at that.
Kind of.
This is the only qualification I have, mate. But look at that.
So congratulations,
Thanks, mate. It just goes to
Great
show, if I can do it, anyone can have a go. And you can end up with something like this with a bit of time and the right products and some good mates to help you along the way. I have had such a good time working under you and learning and stuff, so truly it means a lot. I think with what we've ended up with, this car is really beautiful, and it's thanks to all the hard work you've put in.
Well, all I can say is bloody beauty, mate.
Bloody beauty, mate.
Job's right.
Perfect.
Good job, mate. Good job.
And that is the paint and panel done on the old 82 RN46. Now, of course, we have so much more to do. There's the engine, there's the interior, there's the powertrain. There's lots of work to be done, but I'd just like to take this point to mention a couple of things. Firstly, massive thanks goes to Damo and the team down here at Kappa Motor Bodies as well in Naracoorte. The amount of work that these guys have put in on and off camera really is insane, particularly Damo as well. Been very fortunate to be taken under his wing and learn a whole bunch about this, so I'm not going to forget it in a hurry. Now, of course, if you want to tackle something like this, big or small, as we mentioned, all of the products apart from the base coat colour are U-Pole products, and you can get them from Refinish Imports. Have a crack yourself in your shed with some mates. For now, it's time to get this vehicle on a trailer, get it back to my workshop and hook into the engine and make her drive. Lots to be done, I can't wait. Now that we've got the RedLuxy back in the workshop, before we can hook into all the engine and drivetrain installation and reassembly, There's one more job that Damien's given me to do that's really important, and it's probably to do with a question we've gotten, I reckon, almost the most on all these videos, and it's what are you doing with the inside of the chassis? Now, there are plenty of different options when it comes to your restoration project, from galvanizing right the way through to something like this. Now, this is a bit more of a cost-effective option, and it can work on your project that you're restoring, or even if you drive on salty roads during the winter. This is Brunox IX100. It's a cavity wax, and it's got really good corrosion resistance in it. And what I've got here is this long nozzle that clips on the end of it, and it actually sprays out in 3 different directions. So I'm gonna go through and spray the inside of the chassis, give it a nice, good coating on the inside. And then once I've done that, I'm also gonna do the bottom of the doors and the inside of the guards, and that'll just give me a good couple of years of corrosion resistance. And the beauty is, if you need to touch it up or you need to top it up after a couple of years of hard driving, you've done some river crossings or something like that, just grab yourself a can of one of these and you can go through it again. It just helps to protect the hard to reach places on the inside of the chassis. So I'm gonna go through, find all the holes, give it a nice even coating, and hopefully it should protect the inside of this old chassis for a couple of years to come yet.
The paint wouldn't be complete without having the right decals in place. I called up the boys down at Shockwave Signs to pull together this retro sticker kit that came factory back in the 80s on a lot of US model Toyota pickups. There were 3 main designs that were prevalent at the time that you could get from the factory when you bought your brand new Hilux. I decided to go with this option. This really caught my eye and has stuck with me since I started the project. And using this premium cast vinyl for the decals, I know this will stand the test of time. Oh man, she is looking absolutely amazing. Next up, the engine and drivetrain.
I've well and truly started getting into tearing the engine down, but I just wanted to stop for a moment and have a chat about the engine I'm putting in. So this is a 3RZ. It's a 2.7 litre 4-cylinder petrol engine. Really common in Hiluxes and Hiaces in Australia. It's also really common, I believe, in Tacomas in the United States. Really good engine. They're strong, they're reliable, they're powerful, and they love a turbo. But the reason I've decided on putting one of these in is obviously we're doing a resto mod with this build. So we want to make it look nice and make it look like it used to back in the day, but I'm not putting the original engine back in. I've decided to go back to petrol for a couple of reasons. First, being cost. These 2.7 litre engines are everywhere. It means parts are easy to get, they make good power, and they're reliable, so I have no worries there. I bought the whole conversion and all the bits and pieces for cheaper than I could just get a long motor Hilux equivalent diesel, such as the engine in the Pony and my SAS Hilux. Those engines, whilst they're reliable, like the L series of engines, the 3L, 5L, 5LE, and then the 1KZ, super reliable engine, good reputation, but they're expensive and they don't make heaps of power. The other reason is I haven't done much with petrols. I've rebuilt motorbikes and things like that before, but in terms of petrol engines in cars, I haven't done a lot. So I'd like to learn, and I thought a good opportunity would be to build a petrol engine in this vehicle so I can learn how petrol performance works and things like that. Anyway, back to this engine. So what am I doing? First things first, I've got to strip it down because, as you can see, it's pretty filthy. This engine came out of an LN65 that was already converted, a later model Hilux. So it was already good to go, but I'm going to strip it and tidy it up. Now, when you are turbocharging a naturally aspirated engine, there are a few things you want to look out for, and that is particularly true with this engine. So I'm going to be doing head studs and a head gasket, and I'm also going to rip the head off and send it to a machine shop down the road, Thornley Cylinder Heads, who've done machining work on previous engines I've rebuilt in the past, and they did a great job. The second thing I'm going to be doing to this engine is removing the balance shafts. Now, that is a very common upgrade to do if you are going to be turbocharging this engine, and the reason for that is, whilst the balance shaft will help with the engine running smooth and nice, they can actually, in some cases, starve the engine of much needed oil pressure, particularly when you're running forced induction. So it's a really common upgrade to remove them. I've actually got a balance shaft delete kit from the United States from LC Engineering. Anyway, there's a lot of information there, but hopefully that helps answer some of the questions about what engine I'm putting in this vehicle and why. For now, I'm gonna crack on with getting this stripped and we'll get the head down to the shop. Here's another little handy tip. If you're doing any work to your own vehicle, particularly engine work, get yourself one of these repair manuals. You can get lots of different types. This one, as you can see, it's a bit battered and bruised because I've used this for vehicles for years. This one covers all engines that are in the model of Hilux that I like to play with. So my SAS Hilux, there's all stuff here on that engine. And then this 4-cylinder engine obviously is out of a later model one, but it's got heaps of information in there. You can follow the steps. And if you're watching this and thinking, oh, working on an engine is too much for me, I didn't know how to do this before I started just doing it with one of these books. So get yourself one of these, do it right, and it should help you if you want to tackle a job like this yourself. All right, thanks to the magic of cinema, the engine has been machined and we're back into it ready for assembly. So as I mentioned, I dropped it all down to Thornley cylinder heads. The team there did an awesome job. So they've machined everything, got it all looking nice with the block, cleaned it all up. They've also balanced everything, given the cylinders a bit of a light hone, some slightly oversized pistons, made sure everything was squared away, and they've made sure that this surface in particular, nice and flat and clean. Really important. The head, it's got some new upgraded valve springs and some new valves as well. As I mentioned, head studs and a gasket. Now, when you're turboing an engine, if you're putting forced induction into the cylinders, there's a lot more pressure there and everything. And in some cases, you can get what's called the head lifting. So it's good to put in stronger studs to stop that, and a head gasket that's designed to suit higher horsepower applications, which is why I've gone with a Cometic head gasket and ARP studs. Let's get into it. Whilst I'm just putting some bits and pieces back together, it's probably a good time to answer another question. Now, this is from two people, and they've asked how much time has been involved in the build so far. So Josh Poslux asked about time in panel beating, and then Adventure Matt asked about time in the whole build. So I guess when it comes to the panel beating side, Damien reckons there'll be over 1,000 hours in the body and the tub and everything. So, you know, one person on 38 hours a week, it'd be taking you over 6 months, I reckon. And then when it comes to everything else, obviously, I've spent a few hours on the engine and it's looking like this. So there'll be lots of hours in what's to come. So I can't answer the second question yet, but I reckon probably another 1,000 hours and then some on everything else to get it running and driving. By the time you look at, you know, brake lines and fuel lines, the vehicle will look pretty much complete from now for a very long time, but there'll be all the little 5%ers that'll just make it up, or even the 1%ers, you know, like they take a bit of time, and there'll be plenty more of that to come. For now, I'm gonna get the sump back on. Now, obviously the rocker cover doesn't look as nice as the rest of it. I'm gonna be painting this with some Raptor high temp paint. So the engine will more or less like this with a few other bits and pieces bolted on, go in the vehicle. I'll sit everything in place and I'll probably pull the engine back out or start bolting all the other bits and pieces on. And that's looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. I've never done a head assembly on a petrol engine before, and I'm proud of how we've gone so far. Well, how amazing does this thing look? Considering what we started with the old Luxy to how it's looking now, it really is a thing of beauty. And of course, it wouldn't look like this without the incredibly hard work of blokes like Damien and of course the whole team down at Kappa Motor Bodies as well, and everyone who helped with panel beating along the way. It's such a beautiful looking vehicle and I cannot wait to get it on the road. I'm so stoked to have this vehicle back home in the shed. Now I can really start on the mechanical work. Obviously with all the panel beating done, it's definitely not the beginning of the end, but it is rather the end of the beginning. From now, I've got to get the engine in, the gearbox. There's a whole bunch of work to be done with wiring and fuel and brakes. So there is a lot more ahead, and you'll have to wait till next time to see that, because for now, it's just going to be me on the tools for hours, getting this old Luxy closer every day to being back on the road. But let's just take one more moment to look at this thing, shall we? I'm stoked. Catch you next time.